Cool, crisp mountain air, breathtaking views, snow-blanketed peaks, first tracks, and a reminder of how small we all really are. Some people are born in the mountains. Others merely have heard stories, imagined them, or have seen them in movies, pictures, or news coverage of some unfortunate circumstance. Whether you grew up in the mountains or you've never stepped foot on one thing is certain. Mountains have an undeniable place in our hearts. Inspiration, longing, hope, national borders, power. Whatever your association, it's there. And for some, it's more than a symbol or a feeling. It's all there is. Those rare individuals seem to have an itch that simply can't be scratched. Or maybe it is being scratched, scabbed over, and scratched again until the fresh blood visibly oozes from the festering wound. Maybe this is why I found myself drawn to mountaineering. My name is Brian, experienced backcountry camper, hiker, trekker, lover of the outdoors, and passionate for new adventures. Before last year, I had never climbed any mountains. Sure, I hiked. Yeah, but nothing that you could label an expedition. But for some reason, I started to feel that itch. This is my account of my first summit attempt, what I learned along the way, and what I believe you should consider as a newcomer to the world of mountaineering. Climbing has skyrocketed in popularity since the early 2000s. Participation in the sport has nearly doubled what it was since 2006. After a trek in the Himalayas in April of 2023 to visit the Langtang Valley, I found myself included in the growth of perhaps delusionally confident novice climbers who swear they'll return safe. Or, if not delusional, perhaps simply not deterred by the risk of feeling alive. As evidenced by the now famous conga line photos ascending up to the Everest summit and regular news coverage of mountaineering casualties, we are all too often reminded of the unsexy and sometimes gruesome realities of the sport. But not me. No, my expedition experience would be different. I wasn't going to partake in the over-commercialization of mountain climbing. I wasn't going to pay tens of thousands of dollars to follow preset lines and pre-made footprints leading thousands of feet directly to the peak, just to wait my turn in line like some attraction at Walt Disney World for a shot at a few minutes on the highest point on Earth, conveniently neglecting to acknowledge the Sherpas who would make it possible for me to get there. No. Although I love the Himalayas, I wasn't going to consider Everest at all. An invitation from a good friend set my sights on a different summit, a much more approachable journey to the top of Mount Baker in Washington State. This is legendary mountain climber David Gottlieb. If you've ever attempted to hike anywhere, or even gotten a blister from walking around at Target, you'll understand it's safe to say David has seen some shit. This is someone who has dedicated their every waking moment to life on the mountain and the pursuit of the unknown. Honored in Washington, D.C. by the U.S. Department of the Interior for his heroic rescue attempts, and widely recognized for 4 notable first ascents in Nepal's rolling Himalaya. I had the opportunity to spend a couple of days with David, hear his stories firsthand, and learn the basics of mountaineering from someone who is arguably one of the best to ever do it. Yes, David taught me how to put crampons on properly, how to walk up and down the mountain using my bones as support so I didn't get exhausted, how to ice arrest with an ice axe, how to walk on a rope team, tie a few knots, and a few other mountaineering basics. But he also taught me a few things I didn't expect. Things that every person who fantasizes of climbing mountains needs to hear. By my assessment, David is a natural-born storyteller, or possibly there's simply something inside of him that needs to be released into the ether. In my experience in the mountains, you often encounter higher highs and lower lows than you ever imagined. Perhaps serial storytelling is a way to balance the sheer magnitude of your experiences. David taught me not to be hesitant, to talk to strangers and unapologetically tell them stories about your life that matter to you. In the end, all we have are stories to keep memories alive. David shared stories of his mountain adventures, stories of his childhood, of his dad, his partner, his travels, and sleeping outside under the stars, just to name a few. When I returned home from my mountain climbing trip, I looked up David's name, and sure enough, there were articles written about him in major publications like Alpinist magazine, and almost every Seattle-based newspaper backing up what I had heard up there on Mount Baker. However, there was one story in particular that caught my attention. One story I hadn't heard from David directly. The man who I presumed told me the entire account of his life had left this one out. It should come at no surprise that this story is much like the ones that came before. Sometimes we all wish the past could be rewritten. Mountaineering is a risky business, and you need to know that you might not make it. Worse, those around you might not make it. Cherish your friends while they're around. Life is short. It's really, really short. Spend as much time as you can doing what you love, and everything else will fall into place. And don't care too much what everyone else is saying or doing, or you'll end up in the conga line on Everest. It's never too late to connect with someone new. Be grateful for those who helped you along the way. Without each other, we don't get very far individually. Mountaineering 101. If you're thinking about climbing mountains, then jump in. All in. But know where this path leads you. The ups and downs along the way to the top. The fact that no one stays at the top for long. And the reminding descent that we must all come back down to earth, whether we like it or not. Life is full of these journeys. In its simplest terms, I've come to know mountaineering as synonymous with the cycle of life. A reminder of our physical limitations, a triumphant rejoice of the trials, tribulations, effort, and accomplishments, and the grieving acceptance and celebration of what once was.
Yeah, nice job, nice job, nice job, all right, nice job, woo! Hell yeah, purple fingers.
Oh, and David also shared with me that, in general, pop culture often misses the mark when it comes to their stories about climbers. Stories that circulate in the climbing community are often vastly different than what's projected at large. Most die-hard climbers aren't spending their time making and editing videos and content. They're climbing. I don't claim to understand David, but hopefully this does some justice.